but the government's being told to police the streets, not tweets. The Prime Minister has been told that following this rise in police investigations into what they helpfully call non-crime hate incidents.
Yes, it's following last weekend's police investigation of the Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson. It's now been revealed that 3 of Britain's largest police forces were involved in the investigation of her social media post.
Let's talk once again to former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Redrop, who's here. Morning, Oscar.
Good morning.
We need, surely, in this, a stark, ballsy comment from Keir Starmer to say this shouldn't be going on.
Yeah, real backbone. This isn't something to... When it comes to freedom of speech, there shouldn't be any... In some ways, protecting that shouldn't be some political judgment, subtle kind of, trying to ride 2 horses at the same time on it. It should be condemned what's going on. My former boss, Boris, has called this appalling. The Conservatives have come down really hard on this in opposition, and Keir Starmer needs to do the same. I cannot tell you, yes, this has happened to a journalist, which is probably why it's caught fire a little bit, but this will probably, I think we'll start seeing instances now where people are now brave enough to put their hand in the air and say, this happened to me. Just regular folk, not off the back of the rioting, but just in their day-to-day life, where this, impinging on their freedom of speech is being felt. And I know it's one of the, people should be well versed in this, but once a country and their individuals' freedom of speech is policed too strongly and impinged, that's when everything else starts to fall apart a little bit.
What kind of precedent does it set when not only journalists, as Stephen was saying, this could be anybody posting on X, but we're now hearing about children being recorded and insults and playground vibes and jibes towards other children, things like you smell like fish, being recorded as a non-crime hate incident.
Yeah,
There appears to be some confusion as to what should be recorded and what just goes down as, a chat from the teacher.
Absolutely, and I think we'd all agree, 99% of hurtful words in a classroom can be dealt by a teacher there and then, and should be. Of course they can. And Keir Starmer's got to watch this, because it's interesting how these 2 stories, in the Times and obviously the Telegraph and across all the papers today, how they're kind of aligning. He's got to watch this, because he's already... there's a perception of Keir Starmer, that he doesn't particularly want to allow for freedoms in terms of after those riots, and people wrongly or rightly feel like, the online policing was too much, and people are actually in prison for things that have been said online. And he's got to watch this. Teachers should be allowed to teach and concentrate on that, and police, crucially. Police should be allowed to police our streets and concentrate on that.
But this has all stemmed from, hasn't it, this idea that, it's been around, it's not just political, it's been around for quite a number of years now, of people being offended. I'm really offended by that.
Well,
someone's going to be offended by every you can't avoid offending people. We shouldn't avoid offending people.
And when a government doesn't come down on instances like we've seen over the last week or so, it allows political opponents to utilise it and go, actually, if I report X and Y tweets here, on a couple of times to the police, they could get a knock on the door. That might shut them up. And that's when you start to see this kind of thing snowball. So this is really important. It is worthy people taking very, very seriously. And I say it again, Keir Starmer, backbone on this, please, mate. You need to come out and say, hang on a minute, I want my police out there on the streets, not dealing with this.
Let's take you through the papers today with Scarlett Maguire, former Labour advisor, and the journalist Andy Jones. Morning, you two. Very nice to see you. Scarlett, in the Daily Mail, they're claiming that Keir Starmer backs the thought police.
Actually, what he says is that the police are right to look at data because that might be the beginning of a crime. And can I say...
Oh, please.
All right. So if you look at Prevent, which is about terrorism, they've had children as young as 4 reported to Prevent for things that they've said in the classroom, right, that might or might not be show that they come from a terrorist household. Some child was at secondary school was asked, I think where the guns went on an anti-tank thing or something like that, and immediately he was reported to prevent. So this has been going on for years, right? This has been going on for a decade, and actually it's got to stop completely. But so what Keir Starmer is saying is, you're just talking about things that happen in the classroom, about calling names. But actually, the whole thing began is that teachers have a duty to report things that they're unhappy about, and then people are referred to Prevent. 90% of people who are referred to Prevent, nothing happens. But if they're children, they stay on the police records, right? And the 10% where something happens is normally there's something like a mental health problem. So actually, what Keir Starmer is saying is that if you look at incidents, crime incidents, terrorist incidents, quite often, if you look at the social media stuff that they were doing beforehand, you can see that things were going wrong.
But there's a big difference between that and
I was going to say, Starmer's answering a question here that no one's asking. He's saying that police are right to record early mentions of a tweet in case it leads to some sort of spectacular, horrible thing later on. People's concern is where two police officers are going out to a private address, in the case of Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, to ask her about a tweet she sent over a year ago, and that is a waste of resources. No one is saying that police shouldn't be aware of a tweet that's problematic. If Mr. Smith rings up and says this, take a note of it, judge whether or not you need to go and investigate. Where it becomes a waste of time, where Keir Starmer is being told to police the streets, not the tweets, is where two police officers have been sent to a private address to ask about a historic tweet from over a year ago, when that same police force, Essex, is not catching burglars, not catching shoplifters, not catching car thefts, not catching any of these things. Most of the general British public are not lying awake worrying about tweets. They're worried about the streets, they're worried about burglaries, they're worried about car crime, knife crime. How many, we talk about this show again and again and again, unsolved rapes, unprosecuted rapes. This is the kind of thing people want the police to solve. And I feel like Starmer's deliberately answering a question that no one's asking.
Essex Police, just to say, would say that they're continuing to fight crime. They said they've reduced crime numbers by 5,000 in the last year, and I think it's something like 20,000 in the last 5 years. But the point is, Scarlett, that the recording of these non-crime hate incidents, is widespread. 13,000, over 13,000 in the past year.
I know. Look, I have been on this programme complaining about it, but when it was young Muslim children, oh no, I got told, no, of course we should be monitoring them at school. We shouldn't be doing this at all. We should not be doing this. I'll talk about Alison Pearson in a minute. We should not be monitoring what children say at school at all, whether it's calling people fish face, although, I did complain to a teacher about my child being bullied, but all of us have had that, right?
You wouldn't call out the police.
No, but
I did not call out the police, but what I'm saying is we've got to understand that that's how it began, is that teachers were told they had a duty to report everything, and it's just got out of hand. And actually, it's got to stop. That's what it's got to do. This whole Prevent duty among teachers have got to stop.
All right. Is it about time? This has been brought to much more attention because Alison Pearson is a journalist for The Telegraph, and therefore she's been able to get a platform with Nigel Farage to tell her story. However, is it now time that we really grow a backbone on this politically and put a stop to this nonsense?
Well, the idea that it's taken 3 police forces, let alone 1, but 3, to investigate what might be a tweet of some kind, I think is ridiculous. When you hear story after story of shopkeeper after shopkeeper having to deal with things like shoplifting, when you're seeing no end on the streets of London alone, people having their mobile phones and goods snatched out of their hands. The police need to be policing the streets, not going after people, particularly journalists, who might have said something or not. And by the way, the story when the police turn up, according to Alison Pearson, and weren't able to tell her exactly what she'd said or what they were there for.
Or who lodged the complaint.
Or who lodged the complaint. And by the way, don't tell anyone about this, according to Alison, is ridiculous. It is a police power gone mad. Now, I don't like to criticise the police too much. I think they get enough of it from everybody else. We need to back the police. They do a brilliant job. People that put on that uniform put their lives on the line. But when it comes to these kinds of decisions, who is making them? Is it the officer on the ground? Is it middle management that haven't got a clue what's going on in their communities? Where are the police and crime commissioners to call out this kind of, ridiculous kind of policing? People will rightly be watching this story and throw their hands up in the air and say, what on earth is going on in the police in this country?
Do you think there could be some confusion in the ranks as to what should be recorded as a non-crime hate incident? Because the Times today saying that children as young as 9 are being investigated, but calling other pupils smelly or saying they smell like fish.
And I think, look, as Mel was saying, in the classroom, people have said things that are unkind, and but those are the kinds of incidents for schools you would have thought to fix. If there's bullying in schools, and I absolutely hate bullying in schools, I hate bullies full stop. But it's for schools and parents to come together to sort of deal with that.
It's part of life, isn't it? And it's part of life to read something now on social media that you don't agree with, that heaven forfend you may even be a bit offended by.
Yes.
That's life.
And on social media, breaking news. There's a lot of misinformation on social media. A lot of people post things that actually aren't true, or they don't know what they're talking about, or whatever. You can't challenge everything. You understand, I think, when you go onto a social media platform, that is kind of what you're going to get as part of the ride. But the idea that you're right, police are investigating kids as young as 9, I think is a total waste of police time. I think that's the very definition of total waste of police time. When they should be going after the hardline criminals, people that we read about day after day, where there are real victims in this country that the police appear to be doing nothing about.
But it seems that the government doesn't want to address this issue. I mean, it's not actually facing up to this growing concern.
Well, I think that this government is in a particular sort of sticky wicket because of the riots that we saw over the summer and the accusation of two-tier policing in this country, and I think some of those accusations are absolutely valid. Of course, I mean, trying to be open and fair about it. If there is someone that has posted something on social media that they may not mean necessarily, that might be in a fit of rage about something that they've read or seen on the television, they've just sounded off because that's helpful to them to get it out of their system. That is one thing. If it is a conversation, because it's written and you can't understand maybe the context, or if there is an ability for that conversation to be interpreted in a particular way that then may lead to a crime or might be more hateful, where hate speech does come into it, or a hate crime could be committed, then of course prevention of a hate crime is absolutely essential, and that's where the police can have a role. But you're absolutely right. When it comes to conversations between kids in schools and police having a presence to intervene in that way, I think is totally ridiculous.
OK. Charlie Brody, good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank
With
you.
us in the next hour, aren't you?